Good morning, everyone. For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. Negotiators for the Colombian government and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia agreed to restart peace talks in 6 days. Negotiators on both sides say the fifth and final round of the peace talks involving the victims of the conflict will take place December 16th. The peace process was suspended November 16th when FARC rebels detained General Rubén Darío Alzate and 2 others who were with him. After his release, President Juan Manuel Santos ordered his negotiators back to Havana, Cuba. Secretary General of the Union of South American Nations, Ernesto Samper, has declared that the region's integration process must boost efforts to promote social inclusion. Samper delivered his remarks at a special event leading up to the launch of UNASUR's new headquarters a few miles north of Quito, the capital of Ecuador. Former Brazilian President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva gave a speech in which he said that regional integration is crucial to overcoming economic crises. Lula went on to criticize various sectors of the press that serve financial interests and neglect socialist and progressive governments across Latin America.
Ya sean nacionales o multilaterales, además de aprovechar las oportunidades que ofrece el nuevo Banco de Desarrollo.
Hemos tenido una
Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his Uruguayan counterpart José Mujica met on Wednesday here in Caracas. At the meeting, the 2 leaders reached several agreements on agro-industrial matters, scientific investigations, and energy cooperation. Following the meeting, President Maduro confirmed that the 2 leaders had agreed to increase energy cooperation between the 2 nations. He further explained that Uruguay will collaborate with Venezuela to extract oil from the northern area of the Orinoco oil field.
Hemos conversado intensamente sobre los procesos políticos.
During the 3rd day of the United Nations Conference on Climate Change in Lima, Peru, developing country leaders say that they will not be satisfied with a global climate change agreement. That agreement only includes pledges on emissions cuts. Diplomats from developing countries pressed wealthy nations to do more before a Paris deal that takes effect in 2020. Those countries demand significant financial pledges, technology, capacity building, as well as carbon reduction from developed countries.
Esperaríamos que contribuyan mucho más para llegar.
Large contingents from student and labor organizations departed late Wednesday from the southern Mexican state of Oaxaca. They are headed to Mexico City, where they will participate in another massive march scheduled for Saturday. Activists and supporters have planned demonstrations in nearly 50 cities across Mexico to demand justice for the 43 missing Ayotzinapa students and to continue demanding President Enrique Peña Nieto's resignation. Anger and tension has increased due to a bill being debated in Congress that would restrict protests. The law has been approved by the lower house. Mexican federal troops will replace local police in 32 municipalities. It's an attempt to contain drug gangs that have fueled a surge in violence and corruption. The government released a statement saying military troops would also take on security tasks in the 32 municipalities of the state of Guerrero, Michoacán, and Mexico. Last week, President Peña Nieto vowed to put an end to collusion between officials and drug gangs. Peña Nieto hopes to diffuse anger over the case of 43 students handed over to a drug gang by municipal police in Guerrero State. Thousands of people participated in protests across the United States to demand Washington to stop funding the anti-drug campaign called Plan Mexico. They are protesting that plan in Mexico. They took to streets across the United States this week and say they will continue with the hashtag #USTired2. Several civil rights organizations, human rights and immigrant rights activists, as well as religious organizations and dozens of Latino communities participated in the protests. In a rare statement to the press, Washington called on Mexico's protesters and the government to remain calm and avoid violence. A grand jury in New York declined Wednesday to charge a white police officer in the choking death of Eric Garner. Garner was detained for selling cigarettes. The announcement has further sparked the political debate over race and the criminal justice system. Outgoing U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder has announced a federal probe into the case. Several Democratic lawmakers denounced the grand jury decision. Hundreds of protests erupted in New York City and across the nation Wednesday in reaction to the grand jury decision. Protesters gathered in Times Square as the annual Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting ceremony commenced. Many of them shouted Garner's last words before he died. He shouted, "I can't breathe." Other demonstrations across the United States from New York to Washington, D.C. were mostly peaceful and led to few arrests. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he believes some countries aim to see Russia dismantled in a similar way to Yugoslavia. In his State of the Union speech, the Russian leader criticized U.S. plans to build a missile defense shield in Europe. Putin also says his government will not seek isolation and that it will continue to cooperate with Washington and Europe despite the crisis in Ukraine.
Pues Vladimir Putin se la va a dar también a aquellos con...
And to Sweden now, where for the first time in more than 50 years, snap elections have been called. Prime Minister Stefan Löfven says the vote will be held in March. The measure comes in response to right-wing lawmakers who rejected the center-left minority government's first budget proposal. The crisis was sparked as the unaligned anti-immigration Sweden Democrats effectively blocked the budget while vowing to resist any financial bill unless the country tightened its generous asylum policy. Now to the United States, where President Barack Obama is facing new stiff opposition to his immigration plan. A coalition of 17 states have sued the Obama administration, saying the measure violates the Constitution. The lawsuit aims to have Obama's order declared illegal.
And in some cases, those may be misperceptions.
Iranian officials confirmed late Wednesday that its forces had carried out airstrikes against the Islamic State extremists in Iraq. The Pentagon says Iranian F-4 Phantom jets hit the IS fighters in eastern Iraq but deny any military coordination with Iran. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says the U.S.-led airstrikes have halted ISIS advances through 1,000 airstrikes and admitted the war against ISIS is expected to take years. Kerry is in Brussels leading the first meeting by the 50-member U.S.-led coalition against ISIS. On a lighter note, we go to London, where a rare dinosaur skeleton will go on display today at the National History Museum. It marks the first time in over a century that a dinosaur goes on exhibition in London. The near-complete fossiled remains of a Stegosaurus, a plant-eating dinosaur, were bought by the museum in the United States last year. The 18-foot-long skeleton is made up of some 300 bones. It is 150 million years old and was found on the grounds of a ranch in Wyoming in 2003 and was taken to London in December of 2013. Plenty more on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English for Teleser English. I'm Cody Weddle. Hope you have a great day.